gold just broke out, and I'm going to show you the levels and what my tool is showing me now, and also how you get access to this brand new tool that we actually just launched here at 5 Minute Trade. So let's go ahead and dive into the chart. So the first thing I want to show you is this beautiful volume profile automatically put on my chart. I didn't have to draw it. I didn't have to manually do anything. What is great about this is we're actually having a ton of questions coming in, and so I'm going to answer a couple of those questions today in this video. So stay tuned for that. But essentially, this volume profile, what it does is the entire goal of this, and I am a fan of breakouts. I love breakout trades, whether it is support, whether it's resistance, and essentially what this is a support resistance indicator. Essentially, it's just it values it a little bit different than what you would normally put on the chart. So normally a support resistance will go at the high or at the low. So I actually got a question about this that asks, hey, how's this different than the Magnezone indicator? So essentially, if you don't know what the Magnezone indicator is we actually identify support and resistance levels. If it breaks those, we actually get in a long or a short. This is quite different. It's using volume to identify support and resistance. So while it's the same concept, the same type of concept, really it's quite unique in its own way, because volume is it's really doesn't have a defined support or resistance line. So you can see right here the top of our volume line, which is our buy range. This isn't at the very tippity top. There's some wicks here. There isn't really a defined line, but with our volume and where we actually cut it off, this is where our buy area is. So typically you won't see any of this. So this is the buy, this is the sell range. You won't ever see anything like this if you're manually putting these things on the chart, the volume, the fixed range profile. So that's why I think this tool is so unique and so special. And I think it's going to be really awesome for a lot of you guys who want to do this type of trading. So now, here's the thing here's what happened today on gold. We actually got an explosive move out of the gravity zone. So the gravity zone is, so this is the gravity zone. So this is where price has been bouncing back and forth. It's been bouncing back and forth. There is a lot of volume. This is all volume. See this big red? It's almost like a triangle. It's a triangle of volume, and this is all just stuck in the same place. Once it releases, typically what you see is a very strong move, a very strong move to the upside or downside when it breaks that. And so really what this tool is for is to find those levels. Now, a lot of folks who trade this volume profile, they'll want to try to trade the chop, and that's totally fine. There's actually a way you could do that by if it touches these lines, right? And the target would be the gravity line. So the gravity line is essentially the most volume in this specific time period. So we're scanning this. This is our swing trade mode. So, or actually no, this is the day trade. Let me go back to the so actually day trade, I'm on the hourly, but the day trade is just as powerful as a swing trade, but we still have around the same levels. What the swing trade does though is it allows you, it scans more bars, and what it does is it will show you a lot more where particular volume is. So I'm noticing some pretty interesting levels down here, but I'm also noticing something above. What is above? Absolutely nothing. Right. And so the next available resistance point, if we break this dotted line right here, so you see this line right here, if we break that, the next available one we identified it. So it has to be a strong point of resistance or support, is all the way up here at 5,600. That is all the way back to all-time high. So if we break this level right here, could we go back to all-time highs? Absolutely. There's a wide open space above this on gold. Now there's also open spaces below as well, but notice something. We broke out of this chop from the 23rd to the 27th. So that's quite a few days of just chop. Now we finally broke out of that. So are we going to see something like this where it breaks out, then it just hits a level and then it comes right back down? Or can we break? Can we break this? Can we break this? And then maybe next week we'll start to see some even more move higher, or even more moves higher. So that is very important to see, and I'm glad that we broke it out today. Today's Friday, so probably most likely what will happen is it'll touch this line right here, and if we don't get anything like crazy today, it'll probably just chill out here. So, but this is good that it broke out. Very good news for the bulls. So we have to get back and continue this momentum, right? Because this would be considered a double top if it tops right here, tops right there, and we could see that move back down. Now we could see the move back down into the gravity line before we eventually see that take off. But what this means essentially is that we are a bull. We are bullish. This is a bullish move, right? So what is the percentage that's going to continue to go up? I don't know. I don't have any exact percentages, but what I do know is that we are looking at the data, and the data for us tells us that this is a bullish move and this is a breakout. That is what the data tells us. That is why we are using this particular tool to show us that. So that is on gold. And so if you are interested, and if you're interested in this tool at all, there will be a link in the description. This is a brand new tool that we just released. We're adding a lot of cool little features. We have something called the drift percentage, buy levels. We got sell levels. We have the actual gravity line, which is where the most where the most volume has been in this particular time period. We even have contracts. So if you're an options trader, now this is gold, obviously, so this isn't, you won't be able to trade options, but we actually even have a tracker here. So it's actually up 0.4%. So pretty cool little things that we got going on with this tool. Let's actually jump over to the S&P 500. I call it the chop city. So right now it's just chopping like crazy. We had one strong move here, very strong move inside this chop. But as of right now, there isn't really much to really work off of. Right now, we're in a neutral, a range bound. We're kind of in just a neutral zone. We are very close to the gravity line. We're about a percentage away. So I like to see what price does when it gets close to this gravity line, because typically you'll see it do some interesting things as it gets into that most volume. So there's a lot of orders. Essentially what happens is there's a lot of stops, there's a lot of take profits, there's a lot of orders here that are getting in and out of trades, and they know this line, they understand this line. Retail traders are not really too focused on it. So that's kind of why I wanted to expose this, because there's a lot of just big institutions that know where this area is, and some retail traders are just not ready for it. And so essentially they'll say, okay, I'm going long here, I'm going short. And what happens is they dump it. And so the gravity line is very important. I teach you what you guys should be doing at the gravity line in the members only section with Gravity Zone. So, but what I wanted to do is just point out what possibly could happen here on the S&P 500 moving forward as we're continuing to chop. So there is an obvious downside move, a downside play and an upside play. Anything in between, you can trade it, but anything in between, specifically with the gravity zone, we want to see more distinct breakout areas so we can get into those open spaces. And an open space is what we want to trade with gravity zone. And there is several examples that I could show you what happens when it breaks the gravity zone. One in particular, one that comes to mind is SoFi. And so when SoFi broke this gravity zone all the way up here, it was a clear and distinct breakout. And look what happens when it breaks this big zone. So there's actually a contract that we actually have recommended as well. So there was actually a put contract, and this was the 13% move. So that put contract would have been up quite nicely. at this time. But look what happens. What I want to do is show you, look what happens whenever it breaks out of these zones. So check out this open space. This was a wide open space. And so whenever it broke out of this, it just exploded to the downside. Now they did have some, there were some earnings, there was some other stuff. But at the end of the day, whenever it breaks out, crazy things happen. So we actually just saw a breakout to the downside here. This was actually a gap down, today, and I'm not even sure what the news is. Could be news, but the interesting thing here, so this would be a potential sell opportunity. The one thing that I would definitely say, and I teach this in our course, is that it is at the floor. And so whenever there is a breakdown out of the gravity zone and it hits the floor, what happens? Well, typically you could see a bounce here. You can actually see a bounce here. There's a big gap as well. But if it breaks this floor, now if we break this floor, that could be game over for SoFi. So SoFi was one of the stocks that I've actually been quite interested in. There's actually a trend line right here that I was interested in if it does come all the way down here. So, but I mean, SoFi is just getting absolutely demolished. So this would be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Essentially, I mean, it's really cool to see, like, this was chilling in that gravity zone and then it just boom, straight down out of that. So I do want to talk about, or I do want to hit some Forex stuff, because we actually had a question about Forex. So I shared gold. So what to do? Is this good for Forex? And so the honest question is yes. I mean, there is essentially it does the same. Now I believe volume is, the tick rates are, a little bit different here on the charts, but it's going to be showing you the exact same scenarios as with stocks and other assets. And it's going to show the exact breakouts. I studied this on a bunch of Forex pairs already, and it does really the same exact thing once it breaks out of these levels. So right now, let's just say euro dollar. And obviously it's not gonna be perfect on everything. There isn't, and I don't have 96% win rate or this or that. What I do have is just what I want to identify is breakout levels. That's the whole purpose of this, and to get yourself in trades that are in your favor whenever they break out. And then we have easy targets to capture, whether it would be one of these resistance or support lines or a 2-to-1. And again, I can't reiterate that inside our class, in our course, I teach all of that, how you guys can use this and target things. But in these videos, I'm just going to kind of showcase how this thing would work in a real-time environment. So again, this is a Forex pair. This is euro dollar. Same scenario. If we break this up here, that'd be a great range breakout. Looks like there was a breakout right here. This was a previous one on euro dollar. And so let's see what happened whenever it consolidated here and broke out. So there was a nice gravity zone right here. So this is what you would want to see for a potential sell trade with this. So we have clear and distinct levels where it just could not break. This actually broke out once, but then came right back in. And look at that sell opportunity right there that it triggered. And then this was a really solid trade idea that would have just, it would just played out perfectly. So retest, and then boom, it just went down. I mean, just look at that. That would have been a pretty solid. So right down, that's about 45 pips at the bottom. And again, I don't know how far did it continue to go down. Moved a little bit. So after a certain time, when the gravity zone, whenever it starts to adjust, these lines do start to move around a little bit. But at that time, it was about 45, 50 pips away. So pretty solid, a pretty solid system for, like I said, something like Forex. But again, I'll show you all of that inside our members only stuff, so you can actually check that out as well. So another question I had was a time frame. So I like it on the hourly. But what's cool about this is let's just go for instance SPY again, and we want to do a little. Let's say okay, well maybe we don't. Maybe we want to try it inside that chop. However, we don't want to trade on the higher time frame. So you can actually turn on our day trading mode, which is essentially what it does is it scans less bars and it'll give you those most recent gravity zones. So right now there's actually even to this at this point. So that's the 5 minute. Let's go maybe at the 15 minute and see if there's anything that we can see on the S&P 500 here. So it actually broke out of so this is Chop City on SPY. So I would not have liked this one right here. So this was already broken down out of, it's actually skipped through the gravity zone. So at this point on SPY, I would not be interested in these day trades. Let's actually look to see what it did on maybe Nvidia down here. So again, that was a nice little breakdown. Here's a gravity zone here, and then man, what a beautiful break out of that zone into a floor here. So again, just gives you a different perspective on these charts. It shows you where some of these levels are. Even all the way down here on the 15 minute, you can kind of identify where some of these stronger levels are. Volume profile is one of my favorite things. I have a lot of favorite things, but volume profile is great, and it really just shows you and identifies these key levels, these key breakdown levels. And again, I'm showing some, Nvidia just broke, just from news, but there's a lot of Chop City with some of these tickers, like IBIT. Netflix just had and now again, this is news. And I was actually watching this, but Netflix had a gravity zone here yesterday, and then it broke out of it. But again, that was because of the news that it actually just hit. So a lot of times you can, you can focus on some of these things, but sometimes news will always win, no matter what. When it comes to those big 3, 4, 5, 10% moves, you can't predict those sometimes, and that's just what it is, right? We can use tools like this all day long, but whenever there's news that come in, there isn't a tool that can identify that unless you're an insider, right? So unless we have an insider tool, which I don't have right now, I'm not an insider because that would be illegal. But the only thing we can do is to show what it recently has done, where all the volume is, where all these levels are, and identify some trades. There's actually this AMD trade would have been actually really nice. So there was a nice little break up. Here's a breakdown into these levels. So really nice, really distinct patterns. We're at about 5% drift percent, which is essentially how far we are from the gravity zone. And so 5% is a decent amount. Anything under 10% is still okay, but once you start to get over 10% from the gravity zone, you do start to see these things curl up and try to get back into that zone. So 5% is still not bad. It's been actually a really nice little put trade right there. So on the lower time frame here. So this is kind of some things that I wanted to cover, some questions about it. If you're interested, there'll be a link in the description or wherever in the comments. Go ahead and check this thing out. We have a founders access price. We are launching it right now for most likely limited time. We usually do that for some of these tools like this. So if you are interested, go ahead and grab it now while you can. And yeah, I'll see you guys later.